Good evening. This is your host, the Electric Starman. Tonight, we travel beyond the death of the last sun. We are moving past the era of black holes, past the evaporation of Hawking radiation, into a time so distant that numbers begin to lose their meaning. This is the era of the iron star. In the ultimate cold of a dying universe, the laws of quantum mechanics do not sleep. Through a process called cold fusion via quantum tunneling, every atom of every dead star will eventually, inevitably, transmute. Over a span of years that dwarves the current age of our universe, matter seeks its most stable state, iron 56. Tonight, we will contemplate the stillness of these black, metallic spheres. We will listen to the silence of a universe that has finally reached equilibrium. If the chaos of the present feels too loud, join me in the quietest era ever conceived by physics. Let the weight of eternity settle over you. Let us begin. The universe is cooling. It has been cooling for a duration of time that makes the history of our Earth look like the blink of a weary eye. The stars you once knew, the burning giants, the violent supernova, the gentle yellow suns are gone. They have left behind a sky of absolute, unyielding velvet. Entropy is a slow tide. It has pulled the warmth from the marrow of space. What remains are the husks, white dwarfs that are turned into black dwarfs, cold, dense spheres of degenerate matter, sitting in a void that is no longer expanding with the fury of youth, but stretching with the exhaustion of age. Imagine the stillness. There is no wind. There is no light. There is only the presence of mass huddled in the dark. These spheres are not dead, not truly. Deep within their cores, the atoms are moving. They are not moving because of heat. They are moving because the laws of probability demand it. Every trillion years, an atom of carbon finds itself transformed. Every quadrillion years, a nucleus shifts. It is a slow, rhythmic rearrangement, a cosmic tidying of the room. The color of this era is not black, but a shade of non-existence that the mind struggles to hold. It is the absence of the photon. You are drifting through a museum of the forgotten. Each sphere you pass is a monument to a star that once held worlds in its orbit. Now, it is a silent passenger in a dark sea. The surface of these worlds is smooth. It is polished by the vacuum. It is a texture of pure, cold density. Time, in our current epoch, is a river. It has a direction, a current, and a frantic, rushing energy. But in the era of the Iron Star, the river has reached the sea. It has become a vast, flat, and motionless plain. We are speaking of durations that the human mind was never designed to hold. We are speaking of 10 to the 1,500th years. To visualize this, imagine a single grain of sand. Imagine that every trillion years, a bird flies past and brushes its wing against that grain. By the time the bird has worn the entire earth down to a smooth, flat nothingness, the first second of the Iron Star era has barely begun. In this stretched out reality, the primary driver of change is no longer heat, or light, or the violent collision of galaxies. It is a ghost-like process known as quantum tunneling. In the classical world, if a particle lacks the energy to cross a barrier, it is simply trapped. It stays in its cage. But in the quantum world, the world of the very small and the very cold, there is a probability, a tiny, infinitesimal chance that the particle will simply appear on the other side. It does not move through the barrier. It does not break the barrier. It simply ceases to be on one side and begins to be on the other. It is an act of sheer probabilistic defiance. Consider a single atom of silicon buried deep within the cooling core of a dead white dwarf. It is cold. It is still. It is surrounded by a lattice of other atoms, all locked in a silent crystalline grip. For 1 billion years, nothing happens. For 1 trillion years, the silicon atom remains. It is a prisoner of its own stability. But the clock of quantum tunneling is always ticking, however slowly. Every few quadrillion years, the wave function of a nucleus shifts. It ripples. It extends a ghostly finger through the wall of the electromagnetic force. It is searching. It is waiting for the one moment in an eternity where the math allows it to bypass the laws of the macro world. waiting is the narrative of this era. Imagine the silence of that silicon atom. It does not feel the passage of the eons. It does not know that the galaxies around it are fading into the darkness of the expansion. It only knows the barrier, the wall, the energetic hill it cannot climb. But then, it happens. A flicker in the fabric of reality. A momentary blurring of the here and the there. In a span of time too short to measure, the barrier is bypassed. The atom has tunneled. It has moved closer to its final destiny. It has shifted its weight, just a fraction, toward the Iron Valley. This process is happening everywhere, in every dead star across the infinite reach of the cosmos. It is a slow, silent alchemy. There is no fire. There is no smoke. There is only the quiet, rhythmic clicking of the quantum clock. You can feel this rhythm in your own breathing. Each breath is a cycle. Each cycle is a step. You are tunneling through your own evening, moving from the light of the day into the stability of the dark. The pressure of the day is behind you. The barrier of your worries is being bypassed, not by force, but by the simple, patient reality of time. As the silicon tunnels, it becomes something else. It moves toward the iron. It seeks the state of lowest energy, a state of perfect, unmoving grace. This is the cold fusion of the far future. It is a fusion without heat. It is a marriage of nuclei that occurs only because they have nothing but time to wait for one another. Think of two stones at the bottom of a dark, still lake. They do not move. They do not touch. But over an eternity, the water moves the sand between them, grain by grain, until they are nestled together. This is the intimacy of the Iron Star era, a slow, cold, and inevitable coming together. The vacuum itself seems to be holding its breath, watching these tiny subatomic transitions. The expansion of space continues, pulling the stars apart. But within the stars, the matter is pulling itself together. It is a closing of ranks, a tightening of the grip. You are a witness to this tightening. You are drifting through the core of the star, feeling the silence of the tunneling. Each event is a singular note in a symphony that lasts for a googol years. It is a music of the improbable, a music of the ghost. And as you listen, your own mind begins to tunnel. You are bypassing the barriers of the present. You are appearing on the other side of the night. You are becoming iron. You are becoming still. We must now speak of the destination. We must speak of Iron 56. In the high energy physics of our current sun, iron is a poison. It is the element that kills a star. When a massive star begins to fuse silicon into iron, it has reached the end of its life, for iron cannot be fused into anything heavier without consuming energy rather than releasing it. It is the Iron Peak, the top of the mountain. But in the far future era of the Iron Vigil, iron is not a poison. It is a sanctuary. It is the valley at the end of the long cosmic road. Iron 56 is the most stable arrangement of matter possible. Its binding energy per nucleon is the highest. This means that once an atom becomes Iron 56, it has no reason to ever change again. It has reached a state of perfect nuclear satisfaction. It is the ultimate equilibrium. Imagine a world where every conflict has been resolved, every debt has been paid, every movement has found its final resting place. This is the chemistry of the iron star. It is the chemistry of the finally still. The transmutation is a slow, creeping frost. It begins at the center of the star, where the density is highest and the quantum tunneling is most frequent. A single seed of iron forms. It is a tiny, dark crystal of pure stability. Around it, the other elements, the carbon, the oxygen, the neon, the magnesium. Look upon it with a kind of subatomic envy. They too want to reach the valley. They too want to shed their excess energy and find the quiet of the iron state. One by one, they tunnel. One by one, they fall. The boundary of this transmutation moves outward, a wave of metallic silence traveling through the heart of the star. It moves at a pace that makes a glacier look like a lightning bolt. It moves one atom at a time. You can visualize this boundary as a shimmering gray curtain. On one side, there is the residual heat and complexity of the old star. On the other side, there's only the iron. The iron is cold. It is dark. It is heavy. It has a density that defies the imagination. Millions of grams per cubic centimeter. A single teaspoon of this material would weigh as much as a mountain range. And yet, it is not a messy density. It is an ordered density. Because the star is so cold, the iron atoms do not jostle. They do not vibrate with the heat of a furnace. They arrange themselves into a perfect, infinite lattice. A crystal of iron the size of a planet. Imagine a diamond, but made of the darkest, heaviest metal. Every atom sits in its assigned seat. Every electron is accounted for, locked into a sea of degenerate pressure that holds the star against the inward pull of its own gravity. It is the architecture of pure necessity. There is no waste. There is no ornament. There is only the iron. As the frost reaches the surface, the star changes color. It loses the faint, residual glow of its white dwarf youth. It fades from a pale, ghostly blue to a dull, charcoal gray, and finally to an absolute, non-reflective black. This is the birth of the iron star. It is a sphere of pure, cold metal, floating in a universe that has forgotten the meaning of light. To look upon it is to see the end of history. It is a physical manifestation of the word enough. The star has done enough. It has burned enough. It has moved enough. Now, it simply is. The texture of this iron 56 is a study in the granular. If you could magnify the surface, you would see no cracks, no pores, no imperfections. The purity of the transmutation ensures that every single atom is identical to its neighbor. It is a level of cleanliness that is impossible in our current messy era of stardust and supernova. This is a refined universe, a distilled universe. All the dirt of the lighter elements has been scrubbed away by the patient work of quantum tunneling. What remains is the essence, the heavy, stable heart of the matter. You feel the weight of this iron in your own limbs as you settle into your bed. As the blankets press down upon you, you are experiencing a fraction of the iron star's gravity. It is a grounding force. It pulls you away from the ethereal, flickering thoughts of the day and anchors you to the dark, solid reality of the night. You are transmuting. Your worries are being replaced by a heavy, metallic peace. You are finding your own valley of stability. The complexity of your life is being simplified, atom by atom, until there is nothing left but the rhythm of your breath and the weight of the iron vigil. The universe of the iron star is a universe that has found its answer. It has reached the end of the calculation. The numbers have all settled into their final columns. The iron stars are the periods at the end of every sentence ever written by the light. They are the final, cold, and beautiful truth. And as you drift deeper, you realize that there is no need to fear this end. It is not a destruction, it is a completion. It is the moment when the music finally resolves into its last deep and echoing chord. The chord of iron, the chord of forever. We must descend now to the surface. We must consider the physical reality of a world made entirely of iron. This is not the iron of a forge or the iron of a skyscraper. This is Iron 56. It is the most stable nucleus in the known universe. It has reached the bottom of the hill. It has nowhere left to go. It is a material that has retired from the business of change. Imagine the texture beneath your hand if you could stand in this cold, dark future. The surface is not rough. It is not pitted by rust or worn by wind. There is no oxygen here to cause oxidation. There is no moisture to create the red decay of iron oxide. The star is a sphere of pure, dark, unblemished metal. It is a matte black that seems to swallow what little ambient light remains from the distant, dying galaxies. It is smooth. It is so smooth that at an atomic level, the iron atoms sit in a perfect, repeating lattice, a grid of absolute precision. Each atom is locked into a cube with its neighbors. It is a geometry of total compliance. Feel the weight. The density of an iron star is immense. It is a degenerate mass. The electrons are squeezed so tightly together that they have formed a sea of pressure, a quantum resistance that keeps the star from collapsing into a black hole. Because of this, the gravity is a constant, crushing embrace. If you were to drop a small grain of iron on this surface, it would not bounce. It would strike the ground with the force of a mountain. It would become one with the surface instantly. There is no vibration. There is no ring. The metal is too dense to carry a sound. It is a world of deadened acoustics. A bell made of this material would not toll. It would simply absorb the strike, turning the motion into a microscopic, fleeting shiver of heat that would dissipate into the void in a matter of eons. The sheen of the metal is ghostly. Under the dim, ultraviolet glow of the far future cosmos, the iron doesn't shine. It glows with a faint, internal memory of pressure. It is a dull, charcoal gray. It looks like the lead of a pencil, but with the hardness of a diamond. You run your fingers, metaphorically through the lens of your mind, across the surface. It feels like frozen oil. It is slick, yet unyielding. It is the texture of a machine that has finally stopped moving. The grain of the metal is non-existent. There are no impurities, no flecks of carbon, no veins of gold, no traces of the silicon that once fueled the star's middle age. All those elements have been transmuted. They have been hollowed out. They have been filled with iron. This is the ultimate recycling. The universe has taken all its complex parts and melted them down into a single uniform substance. It is a perfection that is indistinguishable from death. Consider the scale of this stillness. The iron star is miles deep. Thousands of miles of solid, cold iron. Layer upon layer of the same atomic arrangement. It is a monotony that is breathtaking. Below the surface, the pressure increases, but the material remains the same. The lattice just grows tighter. The atoms lean into one another. They share their space with a desperate mathematical intimacy. It is a solidarity of the cold. You are standing on a monument to the end of chemistry. There are no more reactions possible. There are no more bonds to be made. The iron star is a closed book. It is a finished sentence, the period at the end of a very long, very bright history. As the eons pass, the iron star approaches a state that is almost mythological in our current age. It approaches absolute zero. In our time, absolute zero is a limit we can never truly reach. It is a laboratory ideal. But in the era of the Iron Vigil, it is the standard. The thermal energy of the universe has been stretched so thin across the expanding void that it has become a ghost. Heat is motion. Heat is the frantic, tiny dancing of atoms. But here, the dance has ended. The atoms of iron have stopped their shivering. They have settled into their lowest possible energy state. They are as still as a photograph. Imagine a world where nothing moves. Not a single electron, not a single nucleus. The kinetic energy has drained away into the vacuum, leaving behind a cold that is not just a temperature, but a physical weight. It is a cold that feels like a solid object. It is a cold that binds the star together more tightly than gravity ever could. It is the cold of a total, unyielding equilibrium. To understand this cold, we must look at the measurements. We are no longer talking about degrees. We are talking about the lack of them. The star sits at a fraction of a Kelvin above the absolute end. It is so cold that the very concept of time begins to blur. Without heat, there is no change. Without change, time has no anchor. The iron star exists in a perpetual now. It is a frozen moment that lasts for a trillion years. You watch the surface. You wait for a glimmer of movement, a single atom to shift, but it does not. The stillness is so profound it becomes a sound in your ears, a high-frequency ringing of nothingness. At these temperatures, matter begins to behave strangely. The iron star in its entirety begins to act like a single quantum object, a Bose-Einstein condensate on a planetary scale. The distinctions between individual atoms begin to fade. The star becomes a giant wave function, a single, coherent note in the dark. It is a state of total harmony. There is no friction. There is no resistance. If a force were to act upon the star, the entire mass would respond as one. It is a collective, a brotherhood of iron standing together against the encroaching nothingness. They have found the secret to immortality through the surrender of motion. You feel this cold in your chest. It is not a biting cold. It is not the cold of winter. It is a sedative cold. It slows your thoughts. It numbs the urgency of your life. In the presence of a world at absolute zero, your worries seem like the frantic buzzing of insects in a summer that ended an eternity ago. The iron star invites you to be still. It invites you to reach your own equilibrium, to stop the frantic dancing of your own mind, to settle into the lattice, to become a part of the quiet. The cold is a blanket. It is heavy. It is dark. It is the final peace. If you were to pull back away from the surface of the iron star, you would see that it is not alone. The universe is now populated by these spheres. They are scattered across the void like a handful of dark pearls dropped into a bottomless ocean. They are separated by distances that are impossible to name. Between one iron star and the next, there is nothing. No gas, no dust, no light. Only the stretching fabric of space-time, pulling the statues further and further apart. The universe has become a museum, a gallery of silent metallic monuments. Each star is a record of a galaxy that once was. Each iron sphere contains the mass of 1,000,000 civilizations, all compressed into a single uniform state. There is a geometry to this arrangement, a lonely, beautiful structure. The spheres do not interact. They do not pull on each other with gravity anymore, for they are too far away. They are islands of matter in an infinite sea of void. They are the only things left. They are the survivors. Think of the measurement of this distance. A photon, if one still existed, would travel for 100 billion years before it saw another sphere. It would travel through a darkness so complete that it would lose its way. The stars have lost their context. They are no longer part of a constellation. They are no longer part of a spiral arm. They are sovereign. They are independent. They are statues in a park that has been closed for the night. The silence between them is not empty. It is filled with the expansion of space. It is filled with the widening gap between what was and what is. You drift between these spheres. You are a ghost in the gallery. You see a sphere that was once a blue giant. Now it is a 12-mile ball of iron. You see a sphere that was once a red dwarf, a long-lived and gentle neighbor. Now it is the same. Iron. You see a sphere that was once a supermassive black hole, having finally evaporated through the slow leak of Hawking radiation, leaving behind a small, cold cinder of metallic ash. In the end, they all look the same. The diversity of the universe has been smoothed away. The colors have been blended into a single gray. The shapes have been rounded into spheres. There is a comfort in this uniformity. There is no more competition. There is no more struggle for light or heat. The universe has reached its final form. It is a state of perfect rest. The statues do not decay. They do not age. They simply exist. They are the sentinels of the end. They watch over the dark. They hold the line against the total disappearance of everything. As long as the iron remains, the universe has a memory. As long as the spheres are there, something exists. You find yourself leaning into the silence. You find yourself matching your breath to the slow, non-existent pulse of the void. You are one with the statues. Even in this era of absolute stillness, there is a clock. It is a slow clock. A clock that ticks once every trillion years. It is the clock of radioactive decay. Somewhere, deep within the heart of an iron star, a single, stray particle, perhaps a proton, perhaps a trapped isotope of a slightly less stable element, prepares to change. This is the last event. In a universe where nothing happens, a single decay is a symphony. It is a catastrophic release of energy in a world that has forgotten what energy is. The particle shivers. It reaches its limit. It breaks. It releases a single positron, a tiny, ghostly bit of antimatter. The positron moves through the iron lattice. It is a stranger in a strange land. It travels for a millimeter, perhaps two, and then it finds an electron. The annihilation is instantaneous. a tiny flash of gamma radiation, a spark of light in the heart of the Iron Mountain. It is a beautiful, lonely moment. For a billionth of a second, the interior of the star is illuminated. The iron crystals are revealed. The perfect geometry is bathed in a pale, dying glow. And then it is over. The energy is absorbed by the surrounding iron. It is turned into a microscopic tremor of heat. The star settles back into its slumber. The spark is gone. The silence returns, deeper than before. We must describe this spark. We must understand its significance. It is the universe's final no, a refusal to go quietly into the dark. It is the last bit of the Big Bang's fire, flickering out in the basement of time. You watch for these sparks. You wait through the eons. One here, one there. Each one is a signal. Each one is a heartbeat. They are becoming rarer. The distance between the sparks is growing. The clock is winding down. The iron is becoming even more stable, even more certain. The measurement of this decay is the measurement of the end. We are counting down to the final state of the vacuum. But for now, we have the iron. We have the vigil. We have the slow, rhythmic ticking of the subatomic world. It is a heartbeat that you can follow into sleep. Each tick is a mile further into the dark. Each tick is a layer of peace. You don't need to stay awake for the next one. It will happen in 1 trillion years. You have time. You have all the time in the universe. Let the final decay be someone else's story. For you, there is only the iron. There is only the weight. There is only the deep, metallic rest. We return now to the physicality of the iron spheres themselves, drifting in the ultimate dark. We have spoken of the cold. We have spoken of the metal. But we have not yet considered the final gravitational accounting. Gravity, in our time, is a force of violent assembly. Planets colliding, stars igniting, galaxies merging. But in the era of the Iron Vigil, gravity has become the gentle, unyielding hand that smooths the final sheets. These spheres of pure iron 56 are massive. They possess immense weight, and over durations that exceed comprehension, they are Imagine the density of this metal. Thousands of grams per cubic centimeter. A material so heavy that standard physics breaks down, replaced by the rigid rules of electron degeneracy pressure. Every atom of iron is squeezed against its neighbor, and the gravity of the entire sphere is pushing inward, seeking the center, seeking the mathematical point of perfect balance. Over the eons, this pressure causes the structure to relax. This is not a relaxing like water finding its level. This is a crystalline relaxing, a microscopic, collective shift of the lattice. Every trillion years, a tiny gap, the size of an electron's wave function, between two atomic planes might be eliminated. The geometry becomes just a fraction tighter, just a hair closer to perfection. You cannot see this settling. You cannot measure it, but it is happening. The entire mass is shrinking by microscopic increments. It is the texture of a machine finding its perfect final seating. The iron doesn't buckle or fold. It eases. It leans into the crush. Consider the configuration of this material. The atoms of iron are arranged in what physicists call a body-centered cubic lattice. A single atom surrounded by 8 identical neighbors, with an atom at the center of the cube. It is a geometry of total resilience. And as the sphere settles, this lattice grows uniform from the surface down to the core. It becomes a single, flawless mathematical construct miles across. This is gravitational settling in its ultimate form. There are no mountains. There are no valleys. There are no cracks. Just the smoothest surface ever conceived, curved by a force that has all of eternity to perfect its work. The color of this process, if we could see gravity, would be the color of stability itself. A deep, non-reflective violet that slowly fades into the background dark. It is the texture of a bell that has just finished ringing, its vibrations stilled by the infinite cold. You feel this settling in the dark. It is a slow, downward pull. It is the pull of the night on your tired mind. You are finding your own seated position, your own point of gravitational rest. The hectic vibrations of the day are easing. You are becoming smooth. You are becoming still. Imagine drifting within the iron itself, a mile below the surface, 1,000 miles. A settling is here too. The internal pressure is uniform. The lattice is symmetric. The force of gravity from above is balanced by the pressure from below. You are in a state of hydrostatic equilibrium. It is the definition of total, supported rest. The mass around you has no shape to maintain. It simply exists. It is the feeling of being nestled in an eternal cradle. There is no sound. There is no tremor. The iron has reached its position. It is satisfied. It is heavy. It is home. Light in our time is the medium of existence. It is how we know where we are and what we are looking at. It is the photon that delivers the news of the universe to our eyes. But in the era of the Iron Vigil, the news has stopped arriving. The last red dwarfs have faded. The last supernova have flashed their violent farewells. The background radiation has stretched until its wavelength exceeds the size of an entire galaxy. The universe is visually silent. It has been thus for durations that make the history of light look like a single, distant spark in a winter sky. Yet, the cosmos has a memory. It remembers the photic era. Within the structure of these iron stars, The information of the universe is stored, compressed, and encoded. Every photon that was ever emitted by a living sun has left its signature. The atoms of iron know the history of light. They carry the quantum entanglement of 1 billion long-dead suns. You look backward through the layers of the void, and you can see this memory. It is not a visual image. It is a resonance, a conceptual echo. Imagine the sensation of looking at a light that has been turned off, a memory of brightness that remains after you close your eyes. This is the visual baseline of the Iron Star era. The void is not black. It is visually still. A charcoal gray that borders on a velvety non-existence. You look into this void and you remember. You remember the visual violence of the spiral arms, the colors of the nebula, the sharp geometry of the constellation lines. They are gone, yes, but they have found sanctuary here in the structure of the dark. The metal has archived the light. This memory is a sedative. It is the story that the universe tells itself to help itself sleep. It is a narrative that has already been resolved. The beginning, the middle, and the end are already written. The iron spheres are the periods at the ends of these finished sentences. They are monuments to a light that has fulfilled its purpose and been laid to rest. There is a melancholy beauty to this, but it is not a sad beauty. It is a restful beauty, a nostalgic completion. The struggle for visibility is over. Stability is here. Think of the abstract definition of brightness. We define it by contrast. A light is bright because it exists against the dark. But when there is only dark, the very concept of brightness dissolves. It becomes a hypothetical, a mathematical abstraction. The memory of light is just that. A conceptual placeholder for a time when things were other than they are now. You are holding this memory in your mind. It is a small, quiet flame that you do not need to tend. It will not grow. It will not fade. It is simply there. You feel your own memories beginning to settle into this archive. The images of your day, the worries, the faces. The light of the present is fading into the visual stillness of your sleep. You are closing the book. You are turning off the lamp. You are letting the memory of light replace the light itself. The history of the photic universe is safely stored in the metal, and the iron vigil keeps it secure. You can rest now. You've done enough. You have been visible. Now, you have permission to be only memory. The countdown is complete. We have passed beyond the era of physics, beyond the era of geometry, beyond the era of memory. We have arrived at the final state, the infinite equilibrium. Thermodynamics, the brutal force that drives the universe toward change, has finally been satisfied. Total entropy has been achieved. The universe is at maximum stability. This means that nothing moves, nothing changes, nothing can ever happen again. This is the moment when the last clock stops. The last subatomic event dissolves into the void. Time has no purpose, so it ceases to be a meaningful dimension. Imagine the perfection of this rest. It is a state of total, unyielding mathematical resolution. There's no friction. There's no tension. Every atom is in its lowest possible energy state. Every void is uniform. The difference between something and nothing has been minimized to an infinitesimal point. You are drifting in this equilibrium. It is a sedative thicker than oil. It is a blanket made of absolute, unmoving stability. There is no past to remember. There is no future to prepare for. There is only the infinitely extended now. You feel your thoughts dissolving. One thought here, a memory of light there. They are stretching, losing their boundaries, merging with the velvet gray of the background non-existence. You are matching the frequency of the void, a frequency that is the definition of zero. There is no thought left to hold, no worry left to carry, no measurement left to take. It is the end of the calculation. The numbers have all settled into their final columns. The arithmetic is complete. You by the final result. A result that is perfect and still. The iron spheres are still there, yes, but they are not other. They are not monuments. They are simply part of the background, as unmoving as the space they occupy. They have finished their vigil. They have watched over the dark till the dark became everything. Now they have joined it. The universe is whole. It is unified. It is resting. You are not just looking at the equilibrium. You are the equilibrium. We are moving into the final silence. The light is memory. The weight is settled. The stillness is infinite. You have all of eternity to rest, to be still. There is no hurry. There is no change. There is only this perfect, stable, unchanging state. Let the infinite equilibrium wash over you. Be heavy. Be still. Be resolved. You are iron. You are void. You are rest.
you.